My neighbor had a key to my apartment. I never gave him one, but for 6 months, he'd been letting himself in while I was at work, eating my food, sleeping in my bed, watching me through hidden cameras. And I had no idea. Tonight I'm sharing 5 true disturbing neighbor stories from Reddit that will make you question everyone living next door. Story number 3 will absolutely terrify you. Welcome back to Whispers in the Dark. I'm your host, and tonight we're diving into 5 real neighbor horror stories shared by Reddit users. These aren't urban legends. These are actual encounters that happen to real people. Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you never miss our weekly horror content. And if you enjoyed tonight's stories, leave a comment telling me which one scared you the most. Now, settle in, turn down the lights, and let's begin with our first story. About a neighbor who was watching a little too closely. I never thought much about my neighbor in apartment 3B. He seemed normal enough, quiet, kept to himself, and always gave a polite nod when we passed in the hallway. His name was Derek, mid-40s. Worked from home doing something with computers. That's all I knew. That's all I wanted to know. But 3 months after I moved in, I started noticing things. It began with my cat. Midnight would sit at my bedroom window every night, around 9 p.m., just staring out into the darkness. Her tail would puff up, ears flat against her head. I'd look out, see nothing, and assume it was just a stray cat or raccoon in the parking lot below. Then I found the first note. It was tucked under my windshield wiper one morning. Plain white paper, printed text. "You looked beautiful in that blue dress yesterday." No signature, no name. I told myself it was probably from someone at work. Maybe that guy from accounting who always lingered too long at my desk. But the blue dress, I'd only worn it at home. I'd never left my apartment in it. The second note came a week later. This time, it was slipped under my door. "I love watching you read by the window. You look so peaceful." My blood went cold. My reading chair faced the window, but I was on the 3rd floor. Who could possibly see me? I started closing my blinds. All of them, every window, every night. My apartment felt like a cave, but at least I felt safe. That's when the knocking started. 3 soft taps on my door, always at 11 p.m. Always the same rhythm. Dop, dop, dop. I'd look through the peephole and see nothing, just an empty hallway. But I could feel someone there, standing just out of view, waiting. One night, I worked up the courage to check the building's security footage. The property manager owed me a favor, so he let me review the recordings from my floor. What I saw made my hands shake so badly I almost dropped the tablet. Derek, my neighbor from 3B. Standing outside my door every single night at 11 p.m. But he wasn't knocking. He was just standing there, staring at my door for exactly 5 minutes. Then he'd turn around and walk back to his apartment. But it got worse. I scrolled back further in the footage, 2 months of recordings. And there he was, night after night, in the parking lot at 9 p.m. Standing between the cars, looking up at my bedroom window, right where midnight always sat and stared. The property manager called the police immediately. When they searched Derek's apartment, they found a folder on his computer. Hundreds of photos of me, walking to my car, getting my mail, sitting by my window. Some were taken with a zoom lens from the parking lot. Others, I don't know how he got those angles. Derek was arrested that night. Restraining order filed. He moved out within a week. But here's what still haunts me. In that folder, they found something else. A document. A detailed schedule of my daily routine. Down to the minute when I left for work. When I came home. When I turned off my lights. And at the bottom, a single line. Phase 1 complete. Begin Phase 2 on November 15th. They arrested him on November 12th. I moved out the next day. I still don't know what Phase 2 was supposed to be. And honestly, I never want to find out. The apartment was perfect. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, huge windows. And the rent. Almost too good to be true for downtown. The landlord explained the price. The previous tenant left suddenly. We're motivated to fill it quickly. I should have asked more questions. The first night was quiet. I fell asleep to the sound of distant traffic and the hum of my refrigerator. Normal city sounds. Comforting. Even the second night, I heard the dragging. It started around 2 a.m. A slow, heavy, scraping sound, like someone pulling furniture across the floor. It came from the apartment next door, Unit 4C. I pressed my ear against the wall and listened, back and forth, for 20 minutes straight. Then silence. I figured my neighbor was rearranging furniture. Weird time to do it, but people work odd schedules. I went back to sleep. The third night, it happened again. Same time, same rhythm, but this time, between the scraping sounds, I heard something else. Crying. Not loud, sobbing. Just quiet, broken, whimpering, like someone trying desperately not to make noise. I knocked on the wall. "Hey, you okay over there?" The scraping stopped immediately. The crying stopped. Complete silence. Then, after about 30 seconds, 3 slow knocks came back from their side of the wall. Knock. 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 But here's the thing. The knocks didn't come from where I'd knocked. They came from lower, like someone was kneeling on the floor. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I ran into Mrs. Chun from 4A in the hallway. I asked her about the neighbor in 4C. Her face went pale. There is number 4C. Honey, that unit's been empty for 8 months. Landlord can't rent it after what happened. My stomach dropped. What happened? She looked around nervously, then whispered. The previous tenant, young woman, lived alone. She went missing. Police searched the apartment. Found nothing. But a family said she'd been complaining for weeks about strange noises, scraping sounds, crying through the walls. From where? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. From your apartment, 4B, where you're living now. I felt dizzy. But the landlord said the previous tenant in my unit left suddenly. Mrs. Chun shook her head slowly. The previous tenant in 4B didn't leave, sweetheart. She vanished. 3 months ago. Police still haven't found her. That night, I stayed at a friend's place, but I had to go back eventually. I already signed a year lease and couldn't afford to break it. When I returned 2 days later, I noticed something I'd missed before. In my bedroom closet, behind the hanging clothes, there was a small door, maybe 2 feet tall, the kind that leads to crawl space or utility access. It wasn't locked. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a narrow space between the walls, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through, and it led directly to Unit 4C. The empty apartment next door. On the floor of the crawl space, I found deep scratch marks, like someone had been dragged through, and a single shoe. Women's size 7. My size. I called the police immediately. They searched both apartments and the crawl space. They found more scratch marks on the 4C side, and something else. A sleeping bag. Food. Wrappers. Someone had been living in that empty apartment. The police set up surveillance. 2 nights later, they caught him. A man in his 50s. No connection to the building. He'd been breaking into 4C through a basement window for months, living there. Watching the building. When they arrested him, he had a key to my apartment. A copy he'd made somehow. And in his pocket, a handwritten note with my work schedule, my routine. Everything. The detective told me I was lucky. The previous tenant, the one who vanished, they found her remains in a storage unit across town. The man had been watching her too, learned her patterns, waited for the right moment. I was supposed to be next. I moved out that week, broke the lease, Lost my deposit. Didn't care. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. Those crying sounds I heard through the wall. The scraping and the knocking. Was it him trying to scare me? Or was it something else? Some echo of what happened to the woman before me. I still hear those sounds sometimes. Even in my new place. I woke up to the sound of my deadbolt clicking open, not the sound of someone knocking, not someone trying to break in. The actual sound of a key turning in my lock. At 3:47 a.m., I lived alone in a ground floor apartment. I'd lived there for 2 years. Only 2 people had keys, me and the building super. And the super was a 70-year-old woman who could barely climb stairs. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, when I heard footsteps in my living room. Slow, deliberate, like someone who knew exactly where they were going. Then they stopped, right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath. My heart was hammering so loud I was sure whoever was out there could hear it. Then a voice. Male, calm. Almost friendly. I know you're awake, Sarah. He knew my name. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to talk. We're neighbors. We should talk. Neighbors? I'd lived here 2 years and barely knew anyone in the building. I stayed silent, praying he'd leave. I've been watching you for a while now. You're always so careful. Locking your door. Checking your windows. But you forgot something important. He paused. I could hear him breathing on the other side of the door. You forgot to change your locks when you moved in. My blood went ice cold. The previous tenant, when I'd moved in, the landlord said the previous tenant had left in a hurry, broke their lease. Left some furniture behind. I'd never thought to change the locks. The woman who lived here before you, she was my girlfriend. Well, she didn't think so. But we had something special. Celeste got a restraining order. Moved away. Very rude. Oh God. This was the ex. The reason she'd fled, but then you moved in. And I still had my key. Isn't that lucky? I'd been visiting while you're at work. Sitting on your couch. Eating your food. Sleeping in your bed sometimes. You never even noticed. I felt like I was going to throw up. All those times I'd come home and felt like something was off. A chair moved slightly. A cup in the sink I didn't remember using. I'd blamed it on being tired. I've been very patient, Sarah. Waiting for the right time. And tonight feels right. The door handle started to turn. I did the only thing I could think of. I screamed, as loud as I possibly could. And I kept screaming. The handle stopped turning. That wasn't nice, Sarah. But I heard his footsteps backing away, moving toward my front door. He was leaving. Then I heard the deadbolt click again, locking from the outside. I'll come back when you're calmer. We have plenty of time. I called 911 the second I heard the front door close. Police arrived within 6 minutes. They found evidence everywhere. His fingerprints on my kitchen counter, my bedroom door frame, my bathroom mirror. He'd been coming in regularly for weeks. They found him 3 days later, living in the apartment directly above mine. He'd moved in 2 months after I did. Been watching my routine, timing his visits for when I was at work. In his apartment, they found a journal. Pages and pages about me, my schedule, what I wore, what I ate, what time I went to bed, and plans, detailed plans for our future together. The last entry, dated the night he broke in, said, "Tonight I tell her how I feel. If she doesn't understand, I'll have to make her understand. I have the sedatives ready. The storage unit is paid up for 6 months. She'll learn to love me there." They found the storage unit. It was set up like a small apartment. Mattress, chains, bolted to the wall, soundproofing foam on every surface. Food and water for weeks. He'd been planning this for months. The detective told me something that still gives me nightmares. The previous tenant. She'd reported multiple break-ins before she fled, but she could never prove it. Nothing was ever stolen. No signs of forced entry. Police thought she was paranoid. She wasn't paranoid. She was being hunted. He got 12 years. Stalking, breaking, and entering. Attempted kidnapping. He'll be out when he's 50. I moved across the country, changed my name, started over completely. But here's what haunts me. That night, when he was standing outside my bedroom door, he said he'd been sleeping in my bed while I was at work. I'd been complaining for weeks that my sheets always smelled different, like cologne I didn't wear. I thought I was imagining it. I wasn't. And sometimes, late at night in my new place, I still wake up thinking I smell that cologne, even though I know he's in prison. Even though I know I'm safe, some violations don't wash out, no matter how many times you change the sheets. My neighbor Tom was the perfect neighbor. Seriously, he was friendly, but not intrusive. Always offered to help carry groceries, and kept his yard immaculate. A retired firefighter in his mid-60s, he lived alone after his wife passed away. The whole neighborhood loved him. He'd bring over cookies during the holidays, water my plants when I traveled. Once, he even fixed my leaking sink without me asking. Just noticed it and took care of it. That's what neighbors do, he'd say with that warm, grandfatherly smile. I trusted him completely. I gave him a spare key just in case. He gave me one too. We were friends. Then came the day I came home early from work. I'd left that morning for what should have been an 8-hour shift, but I got sent home with a migraine around noon. I pulled into my driveway and noticed Tom's car was gone. Unusual for a Tuesday, he rarely went out during the day. He went inside, took some medicine, and was heading to bed when I heard it. A sound from my basement, like something being moved. My basement door was open. I never left it open. I crept down the stairs, phone in and ready to call 911, and that's when I saw it. The wall. My basement wall. There was a section that looked different. Newer drywall, slightly different color. I'd never noticed it before. And there was a hole in it, freshly made, like someone had punched through. Behind the drywall was a tunnel, narrow, dark, going sideways. I turned on my phone's flashlight and looked inside. The tunnel led directly to Tom's basement, about 15 feet of crawl space connecting our houses. My hands started shaking. I backed away from the hole and ran upstairs. Locked every door. Called the police. When they arrived, they searched Tom's house. He still wasn't home, and what they found in his basement made me physically sick. The tunnel entrance on his side was hidden behind a bookshelf. A bookshelf on wheels. Easy to move. And inside the tunnel, they found tools. A small camera and a notebook. The notebook was a log. Dates and times. Sarah left for work, 7:45 a.m. Entered house, 8 a.m. Stayed 2 hours. Dozens of entries. Going back 6 months, he'd been coming into my house regularly while I was at work. While I was out, using the tunnel he'd dug between our basements. But it got so much worse. They found a hidden room in Tom's basement, behind a false wall. Inside were filing cabinets, organized by address. Each file contained photos, schedules, personal information, not just about me. About every woman who'd lived on our street for the past 15 years. The previous owner of my house, her file was 3 inches thick. Photos of her in her own home, in her bathroom, her bedroom. Some were dated from 10 years ago. Tom had been doing this for over a decade. They found cameras. Tiny ones. Hidden in the tunnel, pointed at my basement door. He'd been watching to see when I came and went, planning his visits. The detective told me they found something else in my house during their search. A small camera hidden in my bedroom smoke detector. Tom had installed it 6 months ago when he fixed my sink. He'd replaced my smoke detector with an identical one that had a camera inside. Everything. He'd seen everything. They arrested Tom at a hardware store. He was buying more drywall to patch the hole he'd made. He'd gotten sloppy, broke through too far, and was trying to fix it before I noticed. When they interviewed him, he didn't seem remorseful. He seemed annoyed. Annoyed that he'd been caught, annoyed that his project was ruined. I was careful for 15 years, he told the detective. One mistake. That's all it takes. They found files on 7 other women, past neighbors. Some had moved away years ago. Some had no idea they'd been watched. One had died in a car accident. Tom had kept her file, marked deceased in red pen. He got 25 years. Multiple counts of stalking, voyeurism, breaking, and entering. At his age, it's basically a life sentence. I moved immediately. Sold the house at a loss. Didn't care. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. All those times he helped me. Fixed things. Watered my plants. Brought over cookies. He wasn't being kind. He was maintaining access. Every act of kindness was just another way to get closer. To have permission to be in my space. I don't trust helpful neighbors anymore. I don't trust grandfatherly smiles. I had my new place swept 4 cameras 3 times before I moved in. And I never, ever give anyone a spare key. Not anymore. I thought I was safe. I'd done everything right. After my neighbor Marcus started acting strange, showing up at my door at odd hours, leaving gifts I never asked for. Somehow knowing my schedule, I filed a restraining order. The judge granted it immediately. Marcus had to stay at least 500 feet away from me in my apartment. He moved out within a week. I watched him load his truck and drive away. I actually felt relief. It was over. That was 3 months ago. Last Tuesday, I came home from work around 6 p.m. Normal evening. I made dinner, watched TV, took a shower. Around 10 p.m., I was getting ready for bed when I noticed something odd. My bedroom window was open. Just a crack, maybe 2 inches. I always kept that window locked. Always. I lived on the 2nd floor, but still, after everything with Marcus, I was paranoid about security. I closed it, locked it, checked it twice, went to bed. The next night, same thing. Window open, just a crack. I started to panic. Was I losing my mind? Was I forgetting to lock it? I put a piece of tape on the window frame before I left for work. If it opened, the tape would break. When I came home, the tape was broken. The window was open 2 inches. Someone was opening my window. While I was gone, I called the police. They came out, searched the apartment, found nothing, told me to install a security camera. So I did. Pointed right at that window. The next day, I checked the footage from my phone at work. At 2:47 p.m., a hand reached through the window from outside. Slowly, carefully. Unlocked it. Pushed it open. Then a face appeared. Marcus? But how? I was on the 2nd floor. There was no fire escape. No balcony. Nothing. I called 911 immediately. Told them Marcus was violating the restraining order. They sent officers to his new address. He wasn't there. Hadn't been there in days, according to his landlord. The police came to my apartment. They searched outside, looking for how he'd reached my window. And they found it. A ladder. Hidden in the bushes below my window. An extendable ladder, lying flat in the landscaping where no one would notice it, unless they were looking. But that's not the worst part. They searched my apartment more thoroughly this time, and they found things. His things, hidden in my home. A jacket in the back of my closet. Not mine. His. A toothbrush in my bathroom cabinet, behind my cleaning supplies. His. Food in my pantry I didn't buy. His favorite brand of protein bars. He'd been coming inside while I was at work. Using that ladder, climbing through the window, spending time in my apartment, leaving pieces of himself behind. The police checked my security camera footage going back 2 weeks. He'd been doing it almost every day, arriving around 2 p.m., staying for hours, eating my food, sitting on my couch, sleeping in my bed. One video showed him standing in my bedroom, holding one of my shirts, just smelling it, for 10 minutes. They found him that night. He'd been living in his car, parked in a grocery store lot 3 blocks away, close enough to walk to my building, far enough that no one would notice. In his car, they found a duffel bag. Inside, zip ties, duct tape, a knife, and a handwritten note that said, "She'll understand eventually. We're meant to be together. If she won't come willingly, I'll have to help her see." He'd been building up to something. The daily visits were preparation. Learning my routine, getting comfortable in my space. The note suggested he was planning to take me somewhere. They arrested him on the spot. Violation of restraining order, stalking, breaking and entering, possession of burglary tools. The DA added attempted kidnapping based on the note and materials in his car. He's in jail now, awaiting trial. No bail. The prosecutor says he's looking at 10 to 15 years minimum. But here's what keeps me up at night. I was living my normal life, going to work, coming home, sleeping in my bed, eating my food, and I had no idea he was there. Hours after I'd leave, he'd be in my space, touching my things, lying where I slept. How many times did I come home and feel like something was off? A chair moved slightly, a smell I didn't recognize. I blamed it on stress, on paranoia from the restraining order situation. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. I moved out of state. New job, new name, new everything. I don't tell people where I live. I don't post on social media. I check every window and door 3 times before bed, and I never open my windows. Ever. Even on beautiful days. Even when it's hot. Because I learned something terrifying. Restraining orders are just paper. They don't stop someone who's decided you belong to them. They just make them more creative. I'm safe now. Probably, but sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night. Convinced I smell his cologne. Convinced I hear footsteps in my apartment. And I have to check every room, every closet, every window, just to make sure I'm really alone. Those were 5 true, disturbing neighbor stories that prove sometimes the scariest things aren't in horror movies. They're reliving right next door. Which story disturbed you the most? Drop a timestamp in the comments. And if you have your own creepy neighbor story, primetawane to hear it. Share it below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Whispers in the Dark, and hit that bell icon for weekly horror content. Next week, we're covering true stalker encounters that ended in narrow escapes. You won't want to miss it. Until then, sleep well, and maybe check your locks one more time. This has been Whispers in the Dark. Stay safe out there.